Good morning, Americans, as Paul Harvey used to say prior to his death in 2009. Welcome to another edition of Brett Winterville Show. He's off the rest of this week. I'm Dick Farrell, filling in for him and honored to do so. Plus, I remind you I'll be back in my regular time slot, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday. A lot to talk about today. We are in a busy situation. I can run down a list of things I want to tell you about. I hope I can get to them all. And remember, we will take your phone calls. If there's something you want to say, you want to correct me, you want to ask information, you want to challenge me, or you want to support what I have to say, or anything that's going on around the world, you go right ahead. It's 1-877-Newsmax. We'll listen to your phone calls. I can guarantee it. Now, the Russia collusion story is taking on some new enlightening stages. And aside from former President Bush involved now in commentary about it, saying that the Russians did meddle in the 2016 election, it's hard to understand why Mr. Bush would even say that. He has been out of office for a good 8 years at that point. I don't know why he's meddling in the news. He has no information beyond that which every average American citizen ought have. President George Bush really needs to be quiet about those things. And the Russia collusion thing, as I mentioned, has taken on some new life. Yes, there is collusion with Russians, and it was Democrats colluding with them. And today, if you haven't seen it already, I will bring you the proof. On top of that, of course, there's some other good things happening. We'll get to all of it. We have the conversation between, some of it anyway, between Congressman Schiff and what he thought were Russian operatives and agents acting under orders of Vladimir Putin. They weren't. They were comedians. He didn't know it. He fell for it like a ton of bricks. We'll also hear from Roger Stone. Roger Stone has adamantly stated that there is no evidence whatsoever about Russia collusion regarding the Trump campaign, and I can't argue with that, but we'll hear him say it. And he said it on the BBC. He had a recent interview on the BBC in which he challenged them on some of their assertions. We're going to hear from Roger Stone, too. Would you believe this? You know, from Ripley's Believe It or Not, Trump's approval rating is now equal to or better than Barack Obama at this point in 2009. That's right. At the 12-month mark of Barack Obama, his poll numbers were right where Donald Trump's numbers are right now. We'll get to more of that. There's more detail on that, but I'm glad you could see that right up front. And Mayor de Blasio, a darling of the left, I mean, he is their angel apparent. He's in a lot of trouble today. Why? Hugging and kissing female legislators, but feminists are outraged. Yep, they're going to burn some more bras over this. And did you know, if you're planning on collecting your life insurance or a big payoff from your retirement funds, think again. Life expectancy has dropped again to 78.6 years. Lots of different reasons for that. So try not to look beyond the age 78 or so. But I have a tendency to want to challenge some of that. We also have Eric Holder. You remember him? The man responsible for running guns to Mexican drug dealers and the Mexican cartel. Well, he's in the news today, maybe running for president. And he says, and remember now, this is a prosecutor. He says there's a likelihood that Donald Trump has, in fact, broken the law and is indictable. Poppycock. Trust me on that. And I'm no lawyer, but I can tell you, it's poppycock. We also have, take a look at today in history, Black History Month. Our hero of Black History Month today is Dr. Lewis Latimer. You may not have heard of him, but I can tell you all about him. A nude passenger on board an Alaska Airlines flight last night went berserk. We'll tell you the details about that. Plus, we have a Nazi running for Congress in Illinois' 3rd District. Luckily for us, we have Allison Camerata and some of her video from an interview with him yesterday. It's, to say the least, folks, hysterical. We'll get to all that and more. If you stay right here, we'll also update the Second Amendment. Folks, a lot of times you hear the Second Amendment this, the Second Amendment that. You have Adam Schiff telling us the Russians like our Second Amendment but won't have one of their own. What is the Second Amendment? Very simple. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's basically what it is. your right to own a gun, and the government has nothing to say about it. Of course, it hasn't been exactly all cut and dry. There's a lot more to it than just that. But I'm going to run down some of the effects of our Second Amendment for you in a little while. In addition to proving that the right to keep and bear arms, plus we'll show you a little quick video of how the right to keep and bear arms actually prevents crime and saves lives. When you hear the liberals moan, groan, and squeal about the children and the violence and the guns, it's all smoke and mirrors. When viewed in light of the cold, hard facts, more guns, less crime, and that's not me talking. That's Professor Gary Kleck at the University of Florida, Tallahassee, who did an extensive, decades-long study to prove that. So when someone like Nazi Plotzy gets on television and tells us that we've got to stop the violence, we got to stop of course we do. And the best way to stop it is by arming America's citizens, because armed citizens do not commit crime. You look at all the crime that has taken place using weapons, including right here in Palm Beach County yesterday, Palm Beach County, Florida. Police had to shut down the major intersection, the major interstate, because of one man with an illegal gun who killed 2 people. An illegal gun, a gun he's not supposed to have. And time and again, people with legal guns protect and defend themselves more times than they can't. But we'll get into more of that, too, in a little while. But first, the Russia collusion story, the story that won't go away. Yes, there's Russia collusion, all right, and there's proof of it. Proof that the Democrats were deep in it, and we have something for you to hear. First, let's hear from Congressman Adam Schiff, who's the ranking member of the Democrats on the House Intel Committee. Here he's going to tell us how the Russians love our Second Amendment. Go ahead, roll tape.
Bigger quantity of content that was being pushed through social media was just content designed to pit us against each other, to exploit our divisions. So, of course, they, as you have seen, they parroted Black Lives Matter to try to broaden the racial divide in this country. Fascinatingly, they also trumpeted the Second Amendment. Apparently, the Russians are very big fans of our Second Amendment. They don't particularly want a Second Amendment of their own, but they're really glad that we have one. The Russians would be thrilled if we were doing nothing but killing each other every day, and sadly, we are.
Well, there's our good Congressman Adam Schiff telling us about how the Russians are all for our Second Amendment. In a moment, we're going to hear from Adam Schiff again in our next segment, because it's a long strip of audio I want you to hear. And you'll hear him on tape talking to Russians about fixing the election. That's right, a Democrat operative, one who's high profile, talking to what he believed were Russian agents, who actually turned out to be Russian comedians, actually Ukrainian comedians, making up stories and names of fake actresses and fake prostitutes. And this congressman, whose credibility now has got to be at the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. That's as low as you can get on planet Earth. That's where his credibility must be, because I want you to hear that little exchange. They call up his office, and you hear the secretary answer, and you hear him refer to the Russian comedian as Mr. Chairman. It's all on tape. We're going to run it for you. But first, a recent interview, the other side of the coin, a recent interview with the BBC. Roger Stone, who was front and center during the Trump campaign for presidency, was on camera talking to the BBC. And in this first clip, you'll hear him give the BBC fellow a little bit for his money about Trump's attitude toward the press. Let's go to Roger Stone.
I'm not going to criticize the president for saying what people think.
The United Nations Human Rights Council described it as racist.
The United Nations, they've accomplished a great deal.
You know, I guess it's this. Here you sit with me in the United Kingdom. You know that there are people around the world who've responded to things they've heard from Donald Trump and wonder whether the United States is led by a racist, and that doesn't seem to worry you.
What matters are deeds, not words. African American unemployment is at the lowest point in our history. I am aware of no evidence whatsoever of collusion by the Russian state or anyone in the Trump campaign or anyone associated with Donald Trump.
There you have it. Somebody who was high up in the Trump campaign telling us that there is no evidence of any collusion between Trump and Russian operatives. But we have plenty of evidence that Democrat ones were tied to the Russians. Let's go to Helen calling us this morning on the Brent Winterville Show with Dick Farrell pinch hitting. Hello, Helen.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I feel good.
Well, good. Yesterday you were talking about, you thinking that we shouldn't be going against sorceries or mind-altering drugs like marijuana and stuff, and that we shouldn't have a war against mind-altering drugs like marijuana. But God the true Jesus Christ is in a war against sorceries or mind-altering drugs. I
don't believe I didn't have this conversation.
If you're not with me, then you're against me.
I didn't have this conversation yesterday. I don't, unless I'm having an Alzheimer's moment. I don't remember having this conversation.
And they were complaining that they got arrested for having a marijuana pot plant on their deck.
Oh, yes. Yes, a long-winded conversation yesterday on this show about a man arrested for having a marijuana plant, a hemp plant, as I call it. Yes, and he went through the process, and it cost him a lot of money for lawyers, but it was ultimately dismissed.
Well, why did he have a marijuana plant growing on his deck?
He didn't explain to us why he did that, but I can assume that maybe he didn't even know it was a marijuana plant. That's possible. The average person walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City would not know what a marijuana plant looks like. I don't think I would.
Well, but the problem is that Jesus says that Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Well, one of its methods for deceiving the whole world is through sorceries. Revelation 18:23. For thy merchants were the great men or people of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived.
All right, I'm familiar with the Revelation. It's not a plural. I'm familiar with that quote. It's not a plural. I'm familiar with that quote. Everything that is written in Scripture is not necessarily exactly as it says it is. Everything is open to interpretation, and, we have laws and customs in the United States of America that don't exactly comport with Scripture. I'm with you on that. It has nothing to do with Satan or Jesus or anybody else, but I'm in favor of putting a cap and a lid on all kinds of mind-altering experiences because they are the root of many evils. So I thank you for the call, Helen. We're coming back here on the Brent Winterville Show in just a bit with a whole lot more stuff. And your phone calls, too. Feel free to buzz. 1-877-NEWSMAX. I'm Dick Farrell. Thanks for being here. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're looking for Brett Winterville, he's off for the balance of the week. I am, pinch hitting for him. I'll be back to my place 2 to 3, Monday to Friday, starting Monday, and he'll be back here on Monday. Now, we're about to go to a caller. However, I wanted to share with you my proof and evidence. It is the Democrats who are consorting with Russians to affect or influence the election of 2016. In case you don't think it exists, we have actual proof that a Democrat congressman high up in the leadership, a fellow who at this very moment is engaged in trying to unearth alleged evidence against the Trump campaign for the same charge, which is ridiculous, isn't it? Well, it goes back to what I've always said. They're taking a page right out of Joe Goebbels' notebook. If you go back in history to the 30s, Joseph Goebbels, who was the minister of propaganda for Hitler's Nazi Germany, he informed and instructed his followers and acolytes to do as you do and blame the opposition for doing it. This is what Adam Schiff is up to right now. Here he is talking to 2 Russian comedians who are pretending to be Russian agents, trying to give him information.
Miss Universe, and there he met with the Russian journalist and celebrity Ksenia Sobchak.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again? While he was in Moscow in November 2013, he met with a journalist and...
Well, she's poor journalist, but anyway, she became famous because of Putin is her godfather.
Okay, Putin's godfather. Okay.
She also known as a person who provides girls for escort for oligarchs, and she met with Trump and she brought him our Russian girl celebrity, Olga Buzova, who also known as a person with a strange reputation.
Olga, and how do you spell her name?
Olga Buzova.
Buzova.
Yes.
Olga Buzova is a friend of the reporter Sobchak?
Yes, she's a friend of a reporter, and I think the special agent of Russian Secret Service, Ksenia Sobchak.
That Sobchak is or Olga is?
No, Sobchak is Ksenia.
Okay, and so Buzova met with Trump in New York at some point after the 2013 Miss Universe
Yes.
pageant.
Absolutely, and she got compromising materials on Trump after their short relations.
Okay, and what's the nature of the compromise?
Well, there were pictures of naked Trump.
Okay. And so Putin was made aware of the availability of the compromising material?
Yes, of course, Buzova shared those materials with Sobchak, and Sobchak shares those materials with Putin, because she's a goddaughter of Putin, and Putin decided to press on Trump.
And the materials that you can provide to the committee or to the FBI, would they corroborate this allegation?
Sure, of course. When they were in Ukraine, we got their conversation by the phone where they discussed those compromising materials. We are ready to provide it to FBI.
So you have recordings of both Sobchak and Buzova where they're discussing the compromising material on Mr. Trump?
Absolutely. And we also know who was a mediator between Trump and Russian government, who met with ex-advisor of Trump, Mr. Flynn. It was a Russian singer, very famous singer, Arkady Ukupnik, who met with Mr. Flynn on Brighton Beach in Brooklyn in a special Russian cafe, Langeron.
What's the name of the cafe?
Langeron.
Langeron?
Yes, it's on the Brighton Beach.
Okay.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, actual audio proof that a Democrat high up in the leadership in the House was seeking to get foreign agents to give him information in order to affect and influence the election. What more proof do you need than that? So when you hear about Russian collusion in influencing and affecting the 2016 election, now the finger of the Justice Department needs to be pointing right at Adam Schiff. Let's go to callers. Kendra in Texas, you're on the Brett Winterbill Show with Dick Farrell pinch hitting. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I feel good.
That's good. Okay, so I have kind of like a statement and also a question. So my statement will be pertaining to the DACA situation. The statement is basically, I don't understand why people will not just tell these people that they need to leave the country. If they've been living here for 20, 30, 40 years, and they've been holding businesses and they've been working jobs and they've been making money, why have none of them applied for their citizenship? Why have none of them went through the proper channels that they're supposed to go to obtain their citizenship? So that's my statement.
The only answer, you said why, that's a question. The only answer is exactly out of the mouth of the administrator's John Kelly when he said, and I quote, "They're too lazy." That's what it is. They're too lazy. They were riding the gravy train for all these years, knowing that they're hiding something from our government and at the same time absorbing resources of our government. And they figured, why kill the goose that laid the golden egg? That's why they didn't apply for citizenship, because they figured they had it made without it. Your next question.
So long. I mean, here in Houston, they are catered to.
I know.
They're catered to. They are
Pampered.
so disrespectful and rude.
They own this place. Let me illustrate.
They really do. I couldn't even imagine living in California where they've basically taken over the population. And I was watching another news channel just maybe like 2 or 3 days ago, and someone was saying that there are DACA recipients that hold city council positions. Like, how is that? How is that fair to allow someone who's not even a citizen to be involved in law, I guess lower level city lawmaking decisions?
Your question is well taken. It shouldn't be allowed, of course. And I've got to point something out to you. What is the effect of an invasion of one country into another? What is the effect? The effect is one country attacks another country for whatever reason and absorbs its wealth and utilizes its productivity for its own purposes. Now, just the fact that they weren't wearing uniforms and carrying weapons and were directed by generals and colonels negates the fact that they came here anyway with the same intention. It is an invasion to acquire our wealth, to interfere with our production, to seize control of our country. Instead of weapons like guns, tanks, and bombs, they used their literacy, they used their language, they used their clothing, they used their crime, they used every other ounce of elements that they could use to upset the balance of power in this country. And they're getting there. They are accomplishing it. The president pointed out during the roundtable on Tuesday, he told you that no other country in the world allows itself to be invaded. But for some crazy reason, we allow ourselves to be invaded. And he said it must stop. So I empathize with you, Kendra, for your phone call, and I understand what you're saying. And I'm as perplexed as you are. Thank you. All right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, it is a Thursday in the USA, February the 8th. I'm Dick Farrell. We're going to take a look at today in history, see the celebrity birthdays for today, and some other stuff. Black History Month, we'll be honoring Dr. Lewis Latimer this morning. No, I'm sorry. During Black History Month, we will not be honoring Willie Mays. We will not be honoring Sugar Ray Robinson. We're not going to be honoring Lionel Richie. We're going to honor people who actually contributed something worthwhile to our society, something we'll always remember, and Dr. Lewis Latimer is one of those. Straight ahead, that and much more here on Newsmax TV. I'm Dick Farrell. Thanks for being here this morning. Welcome back, or welcome in, whichever the case may be. I'm Dick Farrell, in for Brent Winterbill, who's off the balance of this week. He'll be back Monday. And, of course, I go back to where I belong on Monday. That's 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern here on Newsmax TV. You're welcome to call if you're interested. 1-877-NEWSMAX, our phone number. You got something to say? Say it. I want to hear it. Even if nobody else is listening, I want to hear it. Something that's hard to believe, right? I mean, it's going to probably be called fake news by the end of the day, but I got the facts right here. When Donald Trump was elected in an electoral landslide some 15 months ago, he's had to deal with a lot of issues. Spying by the Obama administration as he was president-elect, a corrupt deep state special counsel on Russian collusion, which now I've proven to you that the Russian collusion was with Democrats, a lackluster economy when he came aboard, a foreign policy disaster when he arrived, a radical far-left mainstream media that reportedly gives him negative hit pieces 90% of the time. Now, despite all this bad news, President Trump now holds a 48% approval rating in the Rasmussen Daily Tracking Poll. Rasmussen says that as of Wednesday, 48% of likely U.S. voters approve of the president's job, 51% disapprove. The latest figures include 34% who strongly approve of the way Donald Trump has been performing. And then there's the others, 42% who strongly disapprove. And this gives him a presidential approval index rating of -8 points. Now, President Trump has a stronger approval rating today than the media gave their darling Barack Obama on this month in the year 2010. Back on February 7, 2010, Barack Obama had an approval rating of 44%, while 56% of likely voters disapproved of his far-left policies. So what do we have here exactly? What are we talking about? We're talking about President Trump's approval numbers are as good as or better than the darling left Barack Obama at the same point in his presidency. Earlier I had said 2009. I meant 2012. Will we have time to dig into Mayor de Blasio here, or you think we should hang on to that, folks? All right. One of the darlings of the left, who's a big Obama supporter, of course, is the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, coming under attack from feminists. What did he do? He's been hugging and kissing too many women. Here, check out this report from CBS News in New York. We have some of the evidence against the mayor.
Mayor de Blasio smooched his way through Albany, bestowing kisses on female lawmakers, while most men got a handshake, maybe a pat on the back. Workplace experts say the mayor was out of line, that his charm offensive was not charming and more than a little offensive.
Absolutely horrible.
Stephen Viscusi, an expert in workplace etiquette, not feeling the love for his honor's action.
I wonder if you think that's an appropriate greeting for an executive at a business meeting.
I think certainly for the last 30 or so years that I've been involved in professional and public life, 30 plus years, that has been a norm, and it's been a respectful norm.
Now just imagine, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all three sexes, what if Mayor de Blasio was not the ultra-left-wing darling of the media and all of his apparently communist policies? What would happen if he were a Republican? I can guarantee you, as Uncle Festus used to say, they'd want to have his elbows out on a rail early. Hey, we're back with lots more. I'm Dick Farrell, in for Brent Winterbill on Newsmax TV. Your phone calls will be welcome next. Feel free to call in, say what you want to say. I'm staying right here, so I'm not going anywhere. Neither should you. Welcome back or welcome in. I'm Dick Farrell, in for Brent Winterbill. Brent's away for the rest of the week. I'm filling in. I go back to what I'm doing on Monday, and he'll be back here. And just in case you don't know, I'm on from 2 to 3 Eastern right here, Newsmax TV, and I look forward to seeing you there. Who knows, maybe I'll steal away some of his hardcore fans to also join me Monday to Friday. It's possible. I'm not intentionally doing any of that, but I hope you follow along. Back to the phones we go, to the Bayou State. That's Louisiana, in case you don't know. Hello, Randy. You're on with Dick Farrell on Newsmax TV.
Hey, yes, sir. First-time caller to you. I was watching your news screen here as you're talking, and you got George W. Bush jumping up and down saying the Russians colluded with the Russians, were trying to mess up the election.
Meddling with the election, yeah. Meddling.
Yeah, meddling with the elections
right.
And everything. Well, hey, the Bushes are just as corrupt as the Clintons and the Obamas and everybody all the way from Kennedy.
Well, so, I pointed out, Randy, maybe you didn't catch this, but I pointed out that in 2016, when Bush claims that there was some interference by Russians in the election, he had already been out of office for 8 years. He doesn't know any more than any other average stooge on the street. He's technically not, or theoretically not, connected any longer to national intelligence, national security. He's only one man speaking by himself. And for him to say was grossly irresponsible.
Well, no, this guy, these people are just as corrupt ever since Daddy Bush got in. and apple don't fall too far from the trees. And Prescott Bush, he was in bed with the Nazis back in World War II.
Well, you've heard this quote before.
The dots.
I'm sure you've heard this quote before, that Papa Bush, just as he was leaving office, said to his two sons, "Boy, if the American people ever find out what we're up to, they'll be running us down in the street," or something along those lines. Yeah, there's a lot of hanky-panky. The Bushes have not been above board, but Donald Trump exposed Jeb Bush for the fake, phony fraud that he is and was during the last election cycle, so we should be grateful to the president for at least that. Thank you very much, Randy. We can move on to Missouri, where Diana has something to say here on Newsmax TV. I'm Dick Farrell. Good morning, Diana.
Yes. I wish someone would explain why we give $20 billion in foreign aid to all these other countries. Now, the president said we're only going to start giving it to our friends, but why did we start it? I mean, even our friends need to start standing on their own feet. $20 billion in 1 year would pay for the wall, and we really need that.
Well, I have
it's just unbelievable.
I have an answer to your question. We started foreign aid way back when the Cold War began in an effort to continue helping countries protect themselves from the advance of that monstrosity called communism. And it's kind of a throwback to the 50s and 60s, this nonstop spending spree to underdeveloped countries to help them out. But some of the foreign aid is actually worthwhile. Much of the foreign aid is given to countries that vote against us in the UN, which I can't understand. But some of the foreign aid, like for Israel and Egypt, actually goes to help those countries protect themselves as well as us from terrorism. So there is some legitimate foreign aid, but you're correct. There's no reason whatsoever why we need to continue keeping our pockets. We're allegedly the world's greatest debtor nation. Why are we giving money to people when we obviously don't have enough for ourselves? I've always wondered about that. You know, you hear liberals always complaining about we're the largest debtor nation, but when the liberals want to spend money on illegal aliens and social programs that are duplicative and such, then of course, you know, then we're the wealthiest nation. I don't understand how we could be both the wealthiest nation and the largest debtor nation. They really don't add up. But nevertheless, Diana, thank you so much for the call. 1-877 Newsmax. House Intelligence Chairman David Nunes, Republican of California, rare as that may be, he says he's thought a lot about asking Chief Justice John Roberts to come before Congress and talk about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That's the FISA court. Yesterday, in an interview with Hugh Hewitt, Nunes said GOP investigators have grappled with how to approach the FISA judges about the Intel panel's conclusions that the FBI misled the surveillance court, which they very well may have done. Roberts appointed the judges to that court. Remember, this is a court that operates in secret. Quote, this is something that we like, I said, we have thought a lot about, and the answer is we don't know the correct way to proceed because of the separation of powers. I'm not aware of any time where a judge has, for a lack of better term, testified before Congress. He said the next step is to send a letter to the court and make them aware of the findings, but he and his staff are still debating whether to approach the Supreme Court about their surveillance. Well, that's clearly an obvious thing that needs to be done. Americans know very little about the FISA court. They don't even know what FISA stands for, I just told you. You know, I mean, I thought it was spelled with a PH when I first saw it. You know, I thought it was PHIZER. Americans are not up to speed on the FISA court, and it should be delineated for them by their leaders so they understand what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on. More of Dick Farrell in for Brett Winterbill. Straight ahead here on Newsmax TV and your phone calls. So don't go away. I promise I won't either. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Newsmax TV, I'm Dick Farrell. This is February, and it is Black History Month. Much of the liberal media focuses and concentrates on ball players, singers, dancers, boxers. I don't. I concentrate on inventors, explorers, medical people, scientists. And today we meet Lewis Latimer. When you turn on your electric light bulb, my friends, without Lewis Latimer, you never would have been able to do that. He was born on September 4th, 1848, to parents who had fled slavery. Latimer learned the art of mechanical drawing while working at a patent firm. Over the course of his career as a draftsman, he worked closely with Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and others, in addition to designing his own inventions. He died in my hometown, Flushing, New York, December 11, 1928. Latimer's deep knowledge of both patents and electrical engineering made him an indispensable partner to Thomas Edison. We are grateful for Black History Month, for a great African American, just a great American, Dr. Lewis Latimer, on the Dick Farrel TV, Newsmax TV program. Good morning. Welcome in. Welcome back. I'm Dick Farrell for Brent Winterbill here on Newsmax TV. Glad you could join us. Feel free at any time to interrupt the proceedings if you want at 1-877-NEWSMAX. Love to hear from you. Some of the places we'll explore in this next hour. Life expectancy in the USA has dropped again a second year in a row. I'll tell you why. Also, Eric Holder is speaking out about Donald Trump. Says the former Attorney General there may be enough to indict him. We'll go take a look at that in a little while. Plus, Holder may very well be running for president. And former President George Bush on Thursday, we just scratched the surface on this in the last hour, but I wanted you to hear the quotes. Former President Bush said earlier today, there's pretty clear evidence, that's a quote, pretty clear evidence that the Russians meddled in our 2016 election. Well, I would like to ask you in the audience, does anyone anywhere know anyone who may have voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton because of something the Russians did? I don't recall having voted for anyone in the presidential election because of something the Russians did. I would like the people who keep telling us that the Russians meddled in our election to show me the individuals whose vote went for Hillary Clinton rather than Donald Trump because of something the Russians did. I want to see them connect the dots from A, B to C. Folks, you've got a better chance of the Titanic sailing into New York today with all aboard and fully intact 107 years late. It ain't going to happen. There just is no way to say Russians involved themselves in our election making people vote for Hillary. It ain't. No matter what you say, it cannot be conclusive. In fact, I even go on record that President Obama had told us on numerous occasions that it, quote, was impossible for anyone to meddle in our election. He said that. I should have fished out the quote for us this morning, but I could get it some other time. He said it enough times. If Obama said that meddling in the election is impossible, why are we bothering to waste millions of dollars and giving Bobby Mueller an army of people to go after President Trump with, since we already heard from Barack Obama that meddling in the election was impossible? You say we have a caller? Where's the caller from? Bob. Hello, Bob. You're on with Dick Farrell on Newsmax TV.
I'd like to know what happened about Bergdahl, the deserter.
The deserter. Bergdahl. Bergdahl. When last I checked, Bo Bergdahl was convicted of having deserted, and he was given a pass. He was given even though he was convicted, he was not punished at all. Yeah, he is a deserter, and he may very well have given information to our enemies, which caused the death of several of our soldiers. He may very well have done all of that, but apparently he got to walk. I was surprised, though, about Bo Bergdahl. I thought for sure President Obama was going to pardon him. But thanks a lot, Bob. I'm glad you called. Tony in Pennsylvania, you're next on Newsmax TV. Hello, sir. Tony, you there? Tony. Tony, to New York. No Tony. All right. Former President Bush said on this morning that the Russians meddled in the election, but I pointed out a moment ago, can you show me anyone who says they were convinced to vote for Hillary because of something the Russians did, said, or carried out? While never mentioning Trump by name, Bush appeared to be pushing back on the decisions on immigration as well as having warmed relations with Russia. Is there any reason why we shouldn't have warm relations with Russia? I don't know why the former president would be against having warm relations with a huge country that has tremendous military capability. It's a good idea to be friends with them, don't you think? Anyway, he said, quote, there's pretty clear evidence that the Russians meddled. Well, I'd like him to show us that evidence. With the exception of the evidence I presented here today, Congressman Schiff talking to people he thought were Russian agents, but turned out to be comedians. That's pretty hard evidence that some Russians were at least trying to meddle in the election. Comedians, maybe. But there isn't any official Russians involved in, quote, meddling. Was there? Bush also talked about in Abu Dhabi, the capital of the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, quote, whether they affected our outcome is another question. Bush also said that it's problematic that a foreign nation is involved in our election. Our democracy is only as good as the people have concluded. Russia meddling in the 2016 election to help Trump win. I don't buy it. Numerous investigations are underway to determine whether Trump's campaign aided the Kremlin in its efforts. I don't know if there's any proof, folks. We've gone through more than a year, spent millions of dollars, and have come up with absolute zero evidence. Zero. There's not one shred of evidence that Mr. Trump, was involved with any Russians during the course of the campaign. But we do have evidence that Democrats were involved with Russians trying to meddle in the election. That we have proof of. But we don't have an investigation looking into it. We don't have any prosecutions planned for it. We don't have Eric Holder telling us that there are Democrats that should be indicted. But we do have Eric Holder telling us that Donald Trump should be. Go figure. David, you're next on Newsmax TV. Good morning. What can we help you with?
Good morning. I would just say one thing about the Russian emails from Hillary. Then they exposed the truth and the corruption about the Democrats and the Clintons. And that may have persuaded people to vote against her. But I don't think there's any other possibility. The only possible reason that people may have changed their votes because of the Russians is because they exposed the truth about the Clintons. And that's what I would say about that.
Well, there is a scintilla of truth to what you're saying. There is a measure of reality there, because if in fact, truth is universal. It knows no borders. Truth is not constrained by the Atlantic Ocean. Truth is, above all, the most significant of all things. The truth shall set you free, we are taught. And if the Russians unearthed the truth about Hillary and the DNC, as did a young lady who headed the DNC at one time, you remember her name? I don't at the moment, but I'll think about it. We pointed out that, yes, indeed, she said that there was meddling in the election and that Bernie Sanders was conspired against during the primaries by Hillary. In case you forgot about Donna Brazile, I just reminded you. Thanks so much for the call, David. Let's go to Tony. You're next on Newsmax Television. Hello, Tony. Tony.
How are you, Dick?
I'm good. Hope you are, too.
I'm doing very well. Thank you for what you do. It's nice seeing media that actually tries to get out an honest opinion and non-biased.
Non-biased.
Anyway, a little bit with this. I don't know why people are so surprised about FBI and what they're seeing in it, because if you look in the history of the FBI going all the way back to Hoover, he had secret files on politicians, wealthy elites, movie stars. So this really should be no surprise. I mean, unfortunately, it's the upper echelon, and it's just like a corporation. You're only as good as your management. And these people just have a bias against President Trump and his agenda. And, they want to discredit the president's accomplishments of what he's done already in his first year of office. And it's just like the Dems and the liberals and the liberal media. They want to flat out lie to you, hide the truth, sell you a bill of goods, play the shell game. And when they tell you how to think, how to feel, and what you should do and eliminate history, That's a definition of a socialist and communist country. That's not what the Constitution was founded upon.
Well, they were engaged in much of what you just said during the course of the last administration when they were trying to implement a new system to educate the nation's children. You may or may not recall, they used to call that some kind of affirmative learning. They were eliminating American history. They weren't teaching arithmetic. They wanted to pretty much gut the existing norms for our education. But now that President Trump, the new sheriff in town, he's put Betsy DeVos in charge of education, and they're doing away with that sick, twisted plan that I forget its name to besmirch America's history and role in the world. That's why one of the things I do on this show is remind us of history by doing This Day in History. But you raise a very good point, Tony, and I thank you so much for your input this morning. 1-877 Newsmax, if you'd like to say something, I'm here. Life expectancy in the U.S. has now fallen for a second consecutive year, thanks to a combination of interesting elements. The use of drugs and alcohol, suicides, and according to the report released Wednesday in the USA Today, the drop was particularly large among middle-aged white Americans and those living in rural communities. Experts said in a report to the BMJ, that's the British Medical Journal, it complements one released in December from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention that also found U.S. life expectancy down a second straight year. Quote, "We are seeing an alarming increase in deaths from substance abuse and despair," according to Steve Wolf, University of Virginia, U.S. University, the co-author of the latest report. The idea that the American dream is increasingly out of reach, social mobility declines, and fewer children face a better future than their parents, he said. So that's a warning to y'all. We're up to 78.6 years, the average life expectancy for a baby born today in the USA, 78.6 years. That was the quote that they had in that story. 1-877 Newsmax is the phone number if you want to call and say something about this or anything else that's on your mind. Earlier, I wanted to point out, I am covering Black History Month. I call it Black History Month. I celebrate Black History Month, and I celebrate people worth celebrating. I'm talking about inventors, scientists, medical personnel, teachers, poets, war heroes. We're going to meet one each day with Dick Farrel throughout the month of February. And I take umbrage at what a famous black actor had to say about Black History Month. He doesn't believe we should do it at all. His name is Morgan Freeman. And maybe tomorrow I'll play a bit of his conversation with the late Mike Wallace, where he argued with Mike Wallace about the necessity for a Black History Month. And Wallace, of course, who's not good at arguing about anything, didn't give him much opposition. However, I will provide some. I will provide proof that, well, although Freeman, his heart is in the right place, it's in the wrong place if you think about it. We definitely need Black History Month, and I think we need to point out more inventors, successful business people, American military heroes who are black, because they contributed to the advance of our society. The ball players, the fighters, the singers and dancers, I don't want to continue promoting them because that only promotes the perpetuation of the already sick, disgusting, wrong stereotype. Hey, more coming up here on Newsmax TV. Don't go away. Your phone calls are next. And American Airlines had somebody running naked through the cabin yesterday. I'll tell you all about it on Newsmax TV. Don't go away. Sometimes you can't believe what's in the news. That's why you hear the old euphemism, fake news. You have to wonder whether it's real or not. This next comes from Alaska Airlines. I accidentally said American Airlines. My apologies to American Airlines. Alaska Airlines, a flight from Anchorage to Seattle, was diverted back to Anchorage early Wednesday due to a naked passenger on board the jet. Airport Police and Fire Sergeant Darcy Perry says officers responded At about 3 a.m., the Flight 146, which hadn't taken off but had returned to Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. Quote, there was a subject on the aircraft that had been barricaded by himself in the bathroom. Flight attendants did find the subject was naked. A flight status page on Alaska's website says the jet had been scheduled to take off at 1:25 a.m., but ultimately left on its scheduled flight 5 hours later. A flight status check of its initial trip posted on flightaware.com showed the plane turning back to Prince William Sound. Manuel Frederick and Andrew Tisba, who are founders of the Worldwide Movement for Peace, had met Tuesday with the Mayor Ethan Berkowitz, and they told us their story about what happened on board that flight.
At 3 in the morning, passengers on board an Alaska Airlines flight from Anchorage to Seattle were sent back to Anchorage mid-flight.
Everybody to deplane.
After airport police say a man locked himself in the lavatory. When the flight crew forced the door open, they found him naked inside.
We never saw the guy. They took him from the back. There was no screaming, no big scene, you know.
Yeah, he seemed happy and sad at the same time, somehow.
Andrew Tisba and Manuel Frederick remember seeing the man before boarding the plane.
Everybody saw that there was something weird with him, but nobody did nothing.
And I'm telling you, nowadays the news is from Ripley's Believe It or Not. Let's go to Tony. Is it Tony in Texas? Randall in Texas. You're next on Newsmax TV. Hello.
Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm in Kansas, not in Texas.
Oh, well,
anyway,
a big difference. But okay, Randall in Kansas.
That's all right. I'm just wondering if anybody remembers this, and I do very distinctly, back during the debates with Hillary and Trump, there was question and answer debates, and I remember working in the police. And I don't know if that could be fact-checked or if there's transcripts or anything of them.
I can tell you what I do. I can fill you in on some of this. Hillary was asked to talk to the FBI and did so, but not under oath. She agreed to talk to the Justice Department, but not under oath. And apparently it turns out she lied. And they can't hold her accountable for lying, of course, but they can have General Flynn indicted for his lying to the very same people that Hillary lied to. That's a point and a part I don't understand. Why is it that General Flynn is indictable but not Hillary for the same exact offense? Makes you kind of, things that make you go, huh, that would be one of them. But I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks a lot. And I apologize for calling Kansas, Texas. I'll never do it again. All right, the economy numbers, would you believe this? The economy numbers are getting better and better every day, despite the fact that there have been wide swings in the stock market. Initial U.S. jobless claims fell by 9,000 to 221,000 in the 7 days ending February 3rd. Economists surveyed by MarketWatch forecasted 230,000, the new reading. The more stable monthly average of claims declined by 10,000 to 224,500, the government said Thursday. That's the lowest level since March of 1973. What you have here, gentlemen and ladies, is you have an economy that is supercharged, superheated, producing many more jobs, all in a short space of time since this president came into office. It's impossible for anyone to deduce any other way that this president has affected the economy in a positive fashion. The numbers of growth, the numbers of jobs found, and the numbers of people applying for unemployment have vastly and radically turned around in the 12 months that this man has been in office. There is no other way than to suspect or to confirm that this is exactly what's going on, that the policies of this president are successful in making this economy do what it's supposed to do, and that is grow wealth, grow jobs, and cut into unemployment. We're doing it. We're making it happen more and more again. But you're welcome to talk about this if you're interested. 1-877-NEWSMAX is our phone number, 1-877-NEWSMAX. You're welcome to give us your opinion. And you know what I'm interested in hearing it is from people who are already benefiting from the now expanding economy. After 8 years of ultra stagnation, after, well, it was more than 8 years, it was probably closer to 10 years. The last 2 years of the Bush administration were anemic in terms of our economy. And it's probably what catapulted Barack Obama into the White House. But he didn't do us any favor for 8 long years. Now that Mr. Trump is president, well, you see the numbers. The numbers don't lie. Let's go to Illinois, Chicago, in fact. You're on Newsmax TV, George. Good morning.
Hi, Dick. How you doing?
I feel good.
Good, good. Yeah, I watch your show just, to get different perspectives on what I'm seeing in the news. And I was listening and I heard your comment about Hillary Clinton and the fact you would let all your fans and all your listeners know that anytime you speak to the FBI, they don't put you under oath, but if you lie to them, it's still a felony.
That's right. Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. And that felony committed by Hillary Clinton is somehow not even prosecutable, whereas when General Flynn got before the very same FBI, they managed to indict him for that. It
Wow.
just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, specifically, I've heard a lot of different rumors and saw different facts regarding what exactly, I apologize if I got a little noise in the background. I'm calling from my office.
I'm trying to hear what you're saying. I'm listening to you despite the noise because you're interesting to hear.
Okay, but the facts of the matter is the FBI questioned Hillary, and there was no corroborating evidence of any crimes being committed by her that would result in them having to making criminal indictments. And I understand a lot of people feel that there are senior FBI agents that are colluded to prevent her from being indicted. But you got to understand, the rank and file FBI agents, they have a high level of integrity, and I just don't believe that the rank and file FBI agents would have simply stood by and watched such a thing happen without protesting and taking action to ensure that, the truth was brought forward.
In regards to that, Hillary has admitted, and we have seen evidence on various texts and corroborated by live people. We know that 30,000 emails have disappeared. We know that she destroyed cell phones using hammers. We know that her people used a bleach bit to try and obfuscate much of the evidence that would put her behind bars. It's pretty ugly. But nevertheless, I thank you for the call. We're coming right back with a lot more. There's a Nazi running for Congress in Illinois, speaking of Illinois. Got to tell you about him. And also a teacher in school who's been arrested and in jail now. She thinks it's okay to have sex with students. Coming back at you on Newsmax TV. Don't go away. Boy, I've got to reflect on that thing you just heard. Very important. The two lovebirds of the FBI, and they're texting each other or sexting each other. One said to the other, "Oh, we have to get this all in order for the president to see." And now the cover-up part of it is, oh yeah, the president was interested in the Russia collusion with Trump. The fact of the matter is, folks, it doesn't wash. Prince Obama said in 2016 that he doesn't talk to the FBI, that they act independently of him completely. He has nothing to say to the FBI, said the ex-president. But now suddenly, the two FBI lovebirds who have cheated on their wives and husbands They're telling us that they had to answer to him about the investigation. And now, in order to make it look good, feel good, and say, well, we're cool, that investigation, of course, is not the one looking into Hillary, but the one looking into Donald Trump. Don't buy it, folks. At Winterville till Monday. He gets back on Monday, and I get back to doing what I do on Monday, which is a lot easier. It's half the work. He's on for 2 hours. I do 1, but that'll happen. A former Pickens Academy teacher who was involved in a relationship with 2 students is appealing her conviction, saying that the law that prohibits sexual activity with children is unconstitutional. Forgive me for laughing. Charlie Jones Parker, that's her name, there she is, pleaded guilty in August to having sexual contact with students younger than 19. She's serving a 3-year sentence. The circuit judge ruled the law prohibiting sex between school employees and students is unconstitutional. Apparently, the state appealed the judge's ruling, but the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals have not yet issued a decision in the case. Parker's attorney contends the statute violates the Equal Protection Clause Act because it treats school employees differently than other occupations and criminalizes with what her attorney called private consensual sexual relations. In other words, this Mary Kay Letourneau copycat is justifying her sexual contact with students in her charge. As written, the law prohibits those relationships between employees of the school, regardless of the school they attend. And by the way, it does mention youngsters under 19 are off limits. My only question is, where were these teachers when I went to school? I would have been such a good student had it only happened to me. Sorry about that. I know a lot of times it doesn't all add up. Let's take a quick look at today in history. Today is February 8th. On this day in history, we take a look and see what has happened. Could you give me a picture of some of that? I think, well, that's Louis Latimer. We saw him before. Today in history involves, on this day back in, well, let's see. I wanted to talk to you about this Nazi fellow that is running for Congress, but our Today in History seems to have disappeared. I had today's birthdays all lined up, too. I wanted you to see who was celebrating today, but what the heck. We have this Nazi character who's running for a congressional seat, 3rd District, Illinois. He was on with Allison Camerata on CNN recently, and she put him to shame. But that's not, there's no heavy lifting involved in doing that. However, when we get back from our next break, we'll roll some of the tape on that so you can get an idea of what it looked like. You know, you hear the name, the word, the euphemism Nazi, and it's overused, overplayed, overdone. But what actually is a Nazi? Well, it stands for National Socialist, and it basically embodies the evil that fell upon Germany in the 1930s and began to spread across Europe until it was extinguished. But it hasn't really been extinguished. It still lives in another form today. Over at our friends over at CNN, Allison Camerata confronted a literal Nazi who's currently poised to nab a GOP nomination for Congress. And the interview predictably derailed as the Nazi ranted about, quote, the Jewish media. Arthur Jones, a Holocaust denier, an anti-Semite, white supremacist, and all-around lunatic, is set to run for this seat near Chicago. It's shocking to hear how vocally and unapologetically racist you are. Here, that's what Camerata said, but let's watch her put this guy in his place. It's fun viewing. Allison Camerata on CNN.
The white majority are fed up with all of these lying, cheating, thieving, warmongering, child molesting, political pimps and whores of this corrupt and decadent two-party, Jew party, queer party system.
You
can't have your own facts.
Not conspiracy theory. It's a fact.
Mr.
The
Jones,
Jews controlled
6
basically
million
the country,
Jews
the
were
Congress,
killed.
the economy,
Adolf
the
Hitler
media.
perpetrated a genocide. The Auschwitz death camp existed, and the Nuremberg trial happened. Those are the facts, sir. Either way, here's the larger point. Pinning all of your position and platform on that piece of paper.
As a colleague, I can offer this piece of advice to Ms. Camerata. This is a situation where you need to push the button and shut him up, because she didn't get it. Even though it's not hard to diffuse, debunk, and extinguish these pusillanimous nitwits, which is all they really are, she could have done a better job of just simply cutting his mic and saying what she had to say, because he was intending to talk over her all along. It was a done deal. Before we go to Wayne in California, do we have anything on Eric Holder wanting to indict the president? I believe there should be something there. Eric Holder wants to run for president, and he believes that there's enough evidence already in existence to indict Donald Trump. I think we might have it. If not, worry about it tomorrow. Let's go to Wayne in California. You're next on Newsmax TV. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes,
Good
sir.
morning to all of viewers, and let's all keep our President Donald Trump in our prayers today, and keep his staff and the people around him in prayers. And thank you for having me. I'm one of the many, many people here in California that are Trump supporters and making America great. But there's not many, but there are freedom fighters here in California. I wanted to remind you of something that Tom DeLay just basically recently said, a secret memo that had 12 points in it when he was on Melberg's show, basically talking about bestiality, pedophilia, and all these different types of necromancy and scenarios that the Justice Department was going to try to implement. And thank goodness, so far we're through this president and his wife and the people that are with him. The administration is keeping it suppressed and keeping it from what Clinton wanted it to have done. So continue praying for everybody that's basically exposing these truths and making sure that our families and our people in the communities are safe. Thank you for having me on today.
Glad you could make the trip. Appreciate your comment. Thanks for the call. Well, one of the other things, I guess we ran out of time. I'll save this for tomorrow. I had an interesting story to tell you about the Second Amendment and some facts surrounding our use of firearms and how often they save lives and how often they are used to catch criminals. And it's appalling to think that taking away everyone's guns is going to be the end of all crime. It'll make matters worse than ever. And we won't get to it today, but I promise to have it for you tomorrow. It also will, this video that I'm going to show you, will unravel for you a criminal activity that is stopped by a law-abiding citizen with a firearm, and in which the law-abiding citizen had no choice but to use it. He was backed up to a corner. However, we'll get into it tomorrow. I'll be here again for Brent Winterbill on Friday on Newsmax TV. Hope you can make it. Remember, I get back to my usual assignment Monday from 2 to 3 Eastern right here on Newsmax TV. And who knows, maybe I made a whole bunch of new friends who are going to join me next week. Either way, you're well served by both Brent and I. Stay tuned next. Coming up in the next segment, an interesting looking cartoon. The Philadelphia Eagles are the world champs of football, but they sure did pay a heavy price with all the violence and vandalism on Sunday night. Take a look at, got a funny cartoon I want to show you coming up in the next segment. Meanwhile, here at Newsmax TV, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you again next week and also tomorrow from 10 until noon.